Well, good evening, everyone. Today, I am going to be speaking on what children should know before choosing medicine as a career in India. This is an issue which has been bothering me for a very long time, and I thought this is an important topic for which some data should be available to those who are choosing medicine as a career in India. Just 2 days ago, yesterday in fact, this was the Times of India news that NEET has conducted its exam and over 15 lakh students have applied to get admission into MBBS, or approximately 70,000 seats which are there in the country. My question is, how and why does a youngster choose medicine as a career in India? Is it based on his aptitude? Does he have career counseling in school? Can he change stream after a few years of joining? Is it a hit and trial thing? This is a very complex issue. The first question which arises is, after 10th, we are asked to join medical, non-medical, commerce. My question is a 15 to 16-year-old capable of taking such major decision which is going to affect his life at that age? Another question which arises is, are children being pushed into medicine without their consent? What is consent? Section 87 of Indian Penal Code says that only a person above 18 years can give a valid consent. So at 15, 16 years, the person cannot give a consent for any major decisions, whether it is he is to be operated on, or whether a girl wants to have sex with some boy. For anything, this age is inappropriate, inadequate as per law. But here we are asking them to choose the career which they are going to be in throughout their life at this age. Section 89 of IPC says very clearly that child under 12 years of age cannot give valid consent. So we know that less than 12 years consent cannot be given. More than 18 years it can be given. What happens about these people who are between 12 and 18? Here the law is silent. For medicine, what we normally do is we take consent of parents as well as children in this age group. But the Indian Contract Act, where consent is defined, it states that every person who is of age of majority is competent to contract. And the Indian Majority Act says more than 18 years. So for all practical purposes, it is only above 18 years that somebody can decide on major events of his life. But this event, which is happening at the age of 15 years or maximum 16 years, the person is forced to decide, and this automatically in law becomes without the person's valid consent. India has strange laws. In India, a boy of 18 years can adopt a child. Till 21 years, he cannot get married. So as an unmarried 18 years old, he can adopt a child by law. But he can't have his first drink before 25 years. So many incongruous laws are there regarding this issue. I will not go into the detail. The message I want to give is 15 to 16 years age is the person is not mature enough to be taking a decision which is going to affect his life tremendously. Reasons why youngsters should choose medicine as a career. It is not as if I'm here only to discourage. I'm here to show both sides of the picture, and the person should have all this information before he takes the decision. Unfortunately, most of our people are taking a decision based on what we call bhed chal. Everybody else is doing, so let us also do it. The reasons, positive reasons are, yes, it is a recession-proof career. We had a massive recession in 2008 or so, and so many engineers were laid off, so many other professionals felt the pinch. But medicine is one profession which becomes recession-proof. Whatever happens to the economy, medical profession will carry on. Maybe you will not be earning 100, maybe you will be earning 20, but the fact remains it is a recession-proof career. Second big advantage in medicine is you can work anywhere, in any city, town, or village. If you join, let us say non-medical, you go into IT sector, everybody has to converge on few metropolitan cities. You either go to Bangalore, to Hyderabad, to Gurgaon, to Delhi, to Chennai. You cannot practice in Samrala. You cannot find a job in Ropar. You cannot find a job in smaller places. But as a doctor, you can work anywhere in any city, town, or village. This is a big advantage for medical professionals. You can earn till whatever age you want. Most other professionals are retired, except of course advocates, who are in many ways similar to our situation, but with a lot of advantages. So a doctor need not retire, though the situation which is created in India today is doctors wish to retire earlier than their retirement age. Then a very common answer we hear in interviews when we interview medical students or when we interview people who are coming to join medical colleges, that they have a desire to serve and help alleviate someone's suffering. Many of these people have a genuine desire, but as I will show you, this desire is curbed and destroyed systematically by situations which are coming across in India. Then yes, if you have treated somebody and you have relieved him of his suffering, there is a thrill you get. You are on a high if you are able to treat someone with your expertise. You enjoy it. There is no doubt about it. We have all enjoyed our profession. We have helped someone in need, and it gives us a thrill. This thrill of having treated someone with our expertise cannot be matched by probably any other profession. Then there is an issue of respect of doctors in society. I strongly feel that this respect has been systematically decimated over the years. When India gained independence, the Indian medical service was on equal footing as Indian civil services. Today, the youngest most graduate from Indian civil services, the district magistrate, the DC, can haul up the civil surgeon, the director of health services, at his beck and call at whatever time he deems fit, and dictate him on how to manage a pandemic, as we have seen enormously happening during this COVID. So this respect for doctors in society has plummeted drastically, and I feel it has been systematically decimated by those in power. The other advantage is relatively women face less discrimination in this profession than in other professions. There is no glass ceiling. You can find directors, you can find principals of medical college, you can find head of departments who are women, and yes, there may be odd cases of sexual advances which we come to hear occasionally, but by and large, medicine is the best profession for women who are looking for a place or a profession where there is no gender discrimination. In practice, there is some discrimination in the sense, especially in some areas, in geographical areas and in some specialities, where women surgeons are not accepted on an equal footing. They are still considered Sister Gs, but that is the situation of our society. That is not a fault of the profession per se. These may be the valid reasons which I have enunciated so far, but the reasons why youngsters actually choose medicine as a career today is mostly, however, because of peer pressure. My friend is doing, I am doing. Those who are doing well in class are doing, so I am joining. It is not based on concrete information which they have, and the reasoning is purely based on peer pressure. Then there is a lot of propaganda and false beliefs in the society. Many beliefs are there that doctors earn a lot of money. Doctors have a very cushy lifestyle. Once you have completed MBBS, you are settled for life. And of course, there is parental pressure, which I feel is more from non-medical parents than from doctors themselves. Today, unfortunately, 75 to 80% of medical professionals do not wish their children to join the profession. It says a lot, and I will get into some of the reasons. This kind of public perception that doctors earn crores. I mean, I have been in practice for 30 years, and I still have to see the single digit crore being reached. So I don't know which doctors have, and okay, there are some people who may be very well off, but then those some people very well off in any profession reach a particular level which encourages others to join. Unfortunately, the proportion of such people in medical profession is very, very limited. The routine doctors, the routine practitioners of medical profession of modern scientific medicine, whether they are MBBS, MD, DM, they are in the bracket of somewhere around 40,000 to maybe around 3.5 to 4 lakhs per month. And this is what they remain on throughout their life. Movies, other the TV shows, they give an impression of glamour to medicine. And sometimes somebody has been admitted in a hospital and he has seen some doctors coming in white coat on rounds in teaching institutions, and that seems to have had an effect on the child. Besides that, it is mainly the propaganda from which the children actually imbibe from the TV as well as the movies. Let us talk about the earnings of doctors. There was this case recently where a dengue patient, a child who had dengue fever, he was admitted to Fortis Hospital in the NCR region, and a bill of 15,79,322 was raised. The child had remained in intensive care unit for, I think, 15 or 16 days. The government, the health minister, came into the picture and forced the hospital to refund the bill. I'm not discussing the bill over here. What I'm trying to show is, in a bill of 15,79,000, look at the doctor's charges. The doctor's total charges of all consultants for those 17 days was 53,900 rupees only. This is a very serious disease. This is an infectious disease, and the person is the high mortality disease. And in a bill of nearly 16 lakhs, the doctor's share was only around 50,000. And this is not one doctor's, it is all the doctors who were involved. If an anesthetist comes to intubate the patient, he has a separate fee. If a surgeon is seeing the patient, he has a separate fee. If the medical person is seeing, is a different fee. If the nephrologist sees, the clubbed fee of all doctors was 53,900 rupees. So this impression that doctors earn a lot, based on the hospital bills which are generated today by corporate hospitals is a fallacious impression, and youngsters are best advised not to fall for this kind of thing. Actually, the doctor's effort and the doctor's salary, there is a huge mismatch in India. And this is something which people realize many years after they have graduated, post-graduated, done their super specializations, and have been in practice for 5, 6, 10 years. Then there is this issue of wanting to serve the humanity. This issue, this desire, which many of us have when we join medicine, this is systematically demolished once we come into the system. One, the cost of medical education itself absolutely demolishes any intention to serve. Then there is this Consumer Protection Act 1986, under which IMA versus VP Shanta's judgment included doctors, and courts have given compensations of more than 11-12 crores in cases of medical negligence. These are amounts which no doctor in India today can afford to pay. But unfortunately, the judiciary seems to think that this kind of compensation is going to be without costs. What it has happened is, since 1986, actually since 1995, once this VP Shanta and others judgment came, medical professionals became very careful and started practicing defensive medicine. When I started my career, we used to be basing even the indication for surgery on clinical examination. If clinically I felt the patient was appendicitis, we would operate. If clinically I felt this was a gallstone disease, we would operate. Yes, in one case out of 50, you would be proven wrong. But now we are scared to be proven wrong. So we want to base our decision on some concrete evidence. And when we talk of these concrete evidences, it simply means more cost for the patient. This is the unfortunate part of Consumer Protection Act, which has changed the healthcare scenario in a major manner. Then the society, judiciary, legislature, journalists seem to want that doctors should pay more, but should not charge accordingly. Where should they pay? Look at in medical education. 50%, more than 50% of the seats in existence today, there are around 70,000 odd MBBS seats in the country. And these seats, more than 50% are in private medical colleges. And by law, a private medical college can charge any amount of fee for MBBS for 50% of the seats which are available with it. Some seats go to government quota, some seats go to central quota, some are reserved for different categories. But for 50%, they can charge any amount they want. And currently, this amount ranges anywhere between 60 lakhs to 1 crore. All doctors pay commercial charges for electricity and water. Even if they are having an office in their own residence, they have to pay commercial charges for the entire building for water and for the portion they are using as their clinic for electricity. Similarly, commercial property tax. The thing why it pinches is all my advocate friends will agree that they don't pay any commercial charges for the offices they have in their residential premises. And it is accepted. There is no question raised, there is no finger pointed that an advocate is running his office, his commercial establishment, if I may be permitted to say so, from his residence. But the moment a doctor puts up his signboard, immediately commercial charges are started. Property tax will be commercial. And as I already mentioned, this is the only profession where compensations in crores are awarded. And do you know that advocates to date may be charging 10 lakhs for per hearing, but they cannot be dragged to consumer courts for legal negligence. Let me put the term. We have been dragged to courts for medical negligence, and let me put it in no uncertain words that lawyers cannot be dragged to consumer courts for and accused of legal negligence. So many instances of corruption and so many things we hear in the legal fraternity, but this matter was decided against the lawyers by National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission in 2009. The Bar Council took the case to Supreme Court. Supreme Court granted a stay on the order of the National Commission, and since 2009, today is 2020, that stay has not been vacated. So if an advocate takes money from me, does not fight my case properly, or colludes with the opposite party to damage my case, I have no way of seeking compensation from him, save making a complaint to the Bar Council, which in the medical context is laughable. Another thing I want to bring to your notice is why this medical education in India is so expensive. It is expensive because people in power own these private medical colleges. This was a news item from Tribune. And since then, more medical colleges have sprouted. And to establish a medical college, it is well understood that you require political affiliation. You should be a senior politician yourself, because the approvals and the processes involved are so convoluted that an average person, even with the best of intentions, let me put it this way, Tatas were not able to start a medical college because the system is such that it requires a lot of under the table money changing hands. So what happened? Many students who are otherwise good, let us say the middle order, may not be the top high ranking students, the highest ranking students, but let us say those in the 80th percentile or 90th percentile who are in the general category, they would not get admission to MBBS in medical colleges, and they could not afford to go to private medical colleges because of the prohibitive costs involved. So thousands of Indian students, they started going abroad for their medical education, and these students were seen as some kind of lost revenue by this private medical college mafia. So they created a scenario where foreign medical graduates, if they wish to come back and practice in India, they have to give a licentiating exam, and the pass percentage of that licentiating exam was 16% only. Out of every 100 doctors who appeared in the exam, only 16 were passing. Now compare it with the NEET exam that we are holding, where people who have got less than 0 marks have been given admission. This is because we have reduced the percentile. We have changed the 50% cutoff to a 50th percentile, and this comes out to around 17 to 18% marks. If you have got in your NEET exam, you will get admission. This was very, very important for the private medical colleges, because students who scored more than 50% marks could not necessarily afford the fee structure in private medical colleges in the country. So this was changed to 50th percentile, which brought down the percent from 50% to 17-18%. And now in this large group of between 17 and 18% to 50%, the chances of finding candidates who could afford the fee of the private medical colleges increased. This is what is happening in medical education in India. And look at the cost of medical education in different countries. This is data which I have picked up from the from a news item. Total cost is ranging between 11 lakhs to 19 lakhs. Whereas in India, we talk of that we spend crores to make a doctor in the government sector. If in government sector we are spending crores to make a doctor, obviously the system is very inefficient and we should outsource it to one of these universities. But this desire of children to do MBBS in foreign countries at a lower cost has been curbed drastically because of that licentiating exam. And look at the pass percentage which is shown of candidates who have done their medical degree from foreign medical institutions. We are blamed for the rising healthcare costs. But let me remind you, there has been tremendous technological progress. In 1984, when I graduated, I went and worked in a rural hospital out of my own choice. And we didn't have ultrasounds, we didn't have MRI scans, we had 12-bedded hospital. I had some interns under me, and we used to do tremendous amount of work. The type of risks we took in these times, I would not think of, or I would think the person to be insane if the same type of risks are taken today. The problem is, for modern scientific medicine, we do not have indigenous R&D. Everything we need to look to the West, they develop, we import or we copy, and then we proceed. Indigenous R&D, de novo research is not a thing which is considered useful in India. Then India is also becoming a very materialistic society. 70 to 80% of healthcare was being provided by small and medium healthcare centers. These were mom and pop hospitals. A doctor with his wife would be a gynecologist, doctor would be a surgeon or a physician, and they would be running a small hospital, maybe 10 bed, maybe 25 bed, maybe 15 bed. And they were providing good services. Surgeries were being done for as less as 15,000 and maximum maybe around 25-30,000 major surgeries used to be done. But gradually, with the coming in of this corporate medicine, people started demanding. I don't know whether it is only because of corporate medicine or the effect of TV, which shows hospitals to be 5-star hotels. But we faced in our own nursing home this thing, that people would demand some kind of a cafe coffee day in the hospital, or some kind of services which are not core to the medical practice. They would prefer the sweepers to be dressed in a particular code, things which are not core to medical practice. And these materialistic expectations of society has made many small and medium healthcare establishments to close down. Of course, there is corporatization of medicine, and we have all accepted it with open arms. And this has meant that earlier a patient used to pay the doctor for his services. Now the patient pays to the insurers, to the managers, to the administrators, and a huge chunk of service providers who are not core to the issue of healthcare. They may be purely looking at a department which looks into how bills will be passed by the insurers. There may be a department which looks purely into the quality part of the healthcare. You need various empanelments, you need to be approved from various agencies. And all these people are not core to the treatment aspect of the healthcare. But despite all these costs which have come up, treatment in India still remains dirt cheap. This is a comparison I had got from one of the websites which compared the treatment costs of various major surgeries in India, US, Thailand, Malaysia, Turkey, South Korea, and we were comparable to some of the Far Eastern countries, but not all. Like even in South Korea, a hysterectomy would cost around $11,000 and it would cost only $2,500 in India. So overall cost of treatment, though it has gone up tremendously in the last 2-3 decades, but it is still very much comparable or very much on the lower side when we compare it to other countries across the world. So the question arises, does India need MBBS doctors? Definitely. By sheer virtue of its increasing population, doctors of modern scientific medicine will always be needed in India. Now, this is where the problem arises. Unfortunately, in India, everyone is a doctor of modern scientific medicine. And hence, you do not actually need an MBBS degree to practice as a doctor of modern scientific medicine in India. If you are a qualified Ayush, central government, state governments, multiple efforts, some states permit it legally, all qualified Ayush can practice modern scientific medicine. RMPs, there was a bridge course which was recently being brought by the National Medical Council. Then Baba Ramdev and his ilk. We have so many Baba Ramdevs in our country who cure everything from cancer to corona. Pharmacists, chemists, physiotherapists, all these are doctors of modern scientific medicine. None of them have a MBBS degree. And when it comes to MBBS doctors, many duties are imposed on qualified doctors of modern scientific medicine, but they do not have any rights or privileges in India. The maximum they will get is candles जला के उनको हम honor कर रहे हैं और हम तालियां बजा के उनको honor कर रहे हैं. But what is actually needed is denied. Today, an Indian doctor of modern scientific medicine has to deal with increased government regulation, increasing cost of medical technology, third-party payment system, aggression and violence, unsympathetic law and order machinery, half-baked medical knowledge, myths and misconceptions of the general public, demand for patient autonomy and documentation in a population which is largely illiterate. You have to understand all these are Western concepts. But where do I tell a patient about a stone from the gallbladder which has slipped into the common bile duct when all he is concerned about is कि जी मुझे धरन हो गई और मैं मालिश करा लूंगा और वो ठीक हो जाएगी. This is our country. Day in, day out, even today, I come across patients with duodenal ulcer, patients with cancer in the stomach, all of whom have been had this malish for dharan, which they have been told by their practitioners that that is what they have. And of course, somehow the Nobel Prize Selection Committee has always overlooked our brilliant doctors. Look at this Dr. Munna Tiwari. He can give an advertisement that मरे हुए इंसान को जिंदा किया जाता है. This can only happen in India. Why should youngsters not choose medicine as a career? My problem is, at the age of 15 years or 16 years, you are asked to choose a career path. Once you have chosen medicine, after 11th, in 12th, if you want to go back to non-medical, you cannot do. It is a tunnel system. If you have spent 3 years or 5 years in medicine, you will have to remain in medicine. Those 5 years will not be given credit for if you wish to switch your stream. This is a big problem. So your initial decision has to be bang on target. Then there is something called super specialist culture which has come into India. In the West, we want to copy everything from the West. But look at what happens in the West. If you want to meet a gastroenterologist, if you want to meet a cardiologist, you have to go through your general practitioner. It is the general practitioner's discretion that he may refer, he may not refer. In India, sometimes I am forced to tell my patients, why do you bother to come? You send your heart to Fortis Hospital, let them treat the heart, they will parcel it back to you, put it back, fit it yourself, send your stomach to me, I will operate on the stomach, I will send the stomach back to you, because the concept of general practice is simply gone. An MBBS doctor today, we have reduced his stature to a glorified clerk come ward boy. This is all an MBBS doctor today is. And when we talk of doctors' earnings, we'll look at what the average earning is. An MBBS doctor will get around 40,000, maximum 50,000. This is after 5.5 years of study. MD/MS, 80,000. This is after 9 years of study. If you do DM/MCH, you may get anywhere between 1.5 to 4 lakhs per month. And this is after 12.5 years of study. And the worst part here is, every stage you become unemployed immediately after completing that. There is a contractual employment after MBBS. If you are doing a medical officership, it will be for 6 months. If you are doing a house job, it will be for 6 months. If you are doing your MD, it is a restricted period of 3 years. And after completion of those 3 years, you are on the roads again. There is no assured career progression for an MBBS doctor unless he joins government services. And primary health centers, which are the place, which is the lowermost place where an MBBS doctor fits into the healthcare system in India, maximum vacancies for primary health center doctors in the country is around 3,000 doctors per year. And we produce more than 70,000 doctors per year. So when the government says that MBBS doctors don't go into the villages, let them look at their own figures. This is taken from National Health Survey. I'm not quoting this from my own. And this super specialist culture, where one person is treated by 5 doctors, is the bane of medicine in India today. I have nothing against super specialties. The point is, we should empower the MBBS. Through him, referral, without referral, a specialist should not be seen, but unfortunately, this is only a desire. And other facts youngsters should be aware before choosing medicine as a career. It's a long gestation period. Your classmates from 10th will be 6 or 7 years into their career. They will be in middle order senior management when you will be starting practice. So do not think that money is the reason why you are coming into medicine. There will be a lot of frustration for at least 8 to 10 years when you will see your friends, your classmates doing well in their professions, in other professions, when you are still struggling, studying and filling out forms and sending lab reports and pushing the trolley. It is a difficult lifestyle, especially for women. The point is, for a boy to be studying till the age of 30 is okay. It is acceptable in Indian context. But if a girl is not married at 22 or 24, something must be wrong with the girl. This is our Indian mentality. That way, from family life is concerned, it is difficult for women, and we are seeing this, that in super specialities, the number of women vis-a-vis the number of men is reduced drastically. Whereas in MBBS, when the students join, the ratio is nearly 55 to 45. 55 girls to 45 boys. This is the average ratio. But when it comes to super specialities, there the ratio of women reduces drastically, maybe to around 10%, and 90% are males, because they can afford to be studying till that age, and rigorous study, rigorous work, long duty hours, these are not compatible with a family life which women need. Everybody needs, but it affects the women specifically. Reservations determine your career in medicine. You give your NEET postgraduate exam, you may be so interested in surgery, but because of reservations, because of quotas, because of one thing or the other, you may be getting ENT, and then you have to decide, because if you don't pick up that seat this year, you will have to wait 1 year to apply again. Now this creates a situation where you may end up in a branch you have not the least bit of interest in. Simply for the sake of doing post-graduation, you are joining. Then government has a lot of propaganda. Doctors do not go to villages, doctors do not treat patients. Or the point is, what does the Supreme Court say? It has cast the responsibility of providing services, healthcare services to the people purely on the state. The state cannot avoid its constitutional obligation in that regard on account of financial constraints or any constraints. This is what the Supreme Court said in Paschim Bengal Khet Mazdoor Samiti versus State of West Bengal, 1996. There are multiple judgments after that. Government, in its wisdom, through various laws, through convoluted laws which have been imposed, has passed on this responsibility to private sector. Private sector which is not given any benefit, the private sector which is not given any subsidy, but on its whims and fancies, the state can decide, like in Delhi, now the state has decided that 80% of all hospitals in private sector will have 80% beds will have to be reserved for COVID. The responsibility of providing healthcare to the citizens was of the state, was of the government. The government has not created the infrastructure to deal with a situation like this. Under the circumstances, you are forcing the private sector to absolutely give away, become a sant, give away whatever assets they have created, do service as per the demand of the government. All right, very noble thoughts, but many of these establishments will close down. And what infrastructure has been developed in this country, because the government hasn't developed any infrastructure, healthcare related. And whatever infrastructure has come in, or whatever investment has come in the private sector. And by these kind of notifications, you are ensuring that in future, no FDI, no investments will come from the private sector into healthcare. So the government simply abdicates its duty and finds scapegoats in doctors. It's so easy. We have brought this scheme of Ayushman Bharat. Ayushman Bharat is a scheme where pittance is decided that this is going to be the rate, let us say 9,000 rupees for a cesarean delivery, and the cost of medicine, the cost of everything is included. This is the rate given for Ayushman Bharat. You are forcing doctors, you are forcing hospitals to do something. You are claiming to the public that you have provided 5 lakhs per family, but you are not paying the required rate, because Maharashtra government also recently gave a notification that private hospitals should not charge more than 1 lakh rupees for a delivery. They assessed the ground situation and they realized that problems will arise, so they capped the amounts, but they kept some rational amount. I don't say 1 lakh, 30,000, 40,000, some rational amount should have been decided upon. But it is so easy to blame. You have claimed the public to the public that they will be provided free medical services. The hospitals have been forced to empanel themselves in these kind of schemes, and the hospitals cannot provide the services on those rates. So they escape by making various excuses when such patients come. They will say the bed is not available, they will say gynecologist is not available, whatever the reason may be, they will not accept the patient. They will accept only those cases where it is financially viable for them. Now this is the duty of the government. You wish to involve the private sector, but you cannot force the private sector to work for pittance. Tomorrow you can come with a scheme and say that all the people below the poverty line can get 10 tolas of gold from their nearest goldsmith, and the government will pay them 1,200 rupees a tola. If the tola is 50,000 rupees a tola today, and your proclamation can get your political benefits to you, but that does not mean the goldsmith next to the patient is going to provide him 10 tolas of gold for 1,200 rupees a tola. So my point is, these are responsibilities. Healthcare is a responsibility of the government. The government has not been investing into healthcare, and this has nothing to do with BJP or Congress. The Congress is equally responsible. The total GDP, less than 1.15% of the GDP is government's expenditure on healthcare. This is something which creates a problem, and doctors are blamed for all the fallacies which exist in healthcare in India. Tall promises are made without budget commitment, no regular appointments of MBBS doctors. There are states where no MBBS doctor has been employed in civil medical services for 7 years at a stretch. So when it is said in the parliament that doctors don't go and work in the villages, all this data needs to be put forth. A lot of people give me this argument that doctors are being welcomed. There is a walk-in interview for specialist doctors. Even Punjab has that. The problem is not all specialists are so welcomed. MBBS is not welcome anyway, but not all specialists are also welcome. If you are a pathologist, you may be wanted, you may not be wanted. They may want pediatricians only, or gynecologists only, or physicians only. So only specific specialties are so welcome. Second problem with government service here is a gynecologist joins out of concern for the healthcare of the villages or whatever. And once she is posted, she is asked to do post-mortem duty. Now, she is a gynecologist who's trained for gynae obstetrics. And she is put either as a lab in charge or as for post-mortem duty in a hospital where she has no experience of post-mortem. So she has no option other than to leave the service. Similarly, I had gone to Karnataka, to Hyderabad once, and in one of the hospitals, there was this DM cardiology, and because the government had insisted anybody doing DM in the state has to serve for 2 years in the with the government. and the government has posted them in primary health center. The training the person received for doing angiography, angioplasty, obviously he is going to lose the skills if he is posted in a primary health center, which does not have facilities even for an ECG. And in the government sector, there is this postings and transfer mafia. I mean, the less said about this is the better, because all doctors are forced to kowtow to this mafia. Basically, doctors in India have been made whipping boys. What whipping boys were? In olden days, the kings and the rajas, their children would go to schools, and in those schools, there would be other children also. But the teacher there could not spank the prince. So to get over the problem, another boy used to be sent along with the prince to schools, and if the prince did something wrong and he had to be punished, the boy who accompanied the prince would be punished, and he used to be called the whipping boy. So doctors today are actually whipping boys of India, and all the faults or fallacies are dumped on the heads of doctors today. Another major problem with medical profession today is what we are facing is there is a disproportionate universal desire to hold doctors accountable. Everybody wants to hold doctors accountable, whether or not they have an iota of medical knowledge, but everybody has an opinion and everybody is overeager. Today, doctors are under Consumer Protection Act. They are being dragged regularly. But what is strange is doctors also simultaneously, in the same case, can be dragged and complaint can be made to State Medical Council. A police complaint can be made, FIR lodged. A medical board which may be formed if the person has given a complaint to to either the civil surgeon or the CM or the Prime Minister, the order will come and a medical board will be formed. There is something called Clinical Establishment Act which has come in now. For that same case, a complaint can be made to the Clinical Establishment Act, to NABH, Central Consumer Protection Authority, ECHS authorities, Ayushman Bharat authorities, NRI cell, Women's cell, SC/ST Commission, Civil Suit for Compensation, National Human Rights Commission, and even High Court and Supreme Court under Article 226 and 32. I will not go into the details, but the problem with this is, at a time, for one single case of alleged medical negligence, the doctor may be defending himself before 5 or 6 fora, tribunals, commissions, whatever. Basically, these are quasi-judicial bodies where doctor has to defend himself. And whichever gives the judgment first, whether the judgment is correct or not, is usually lapped up by the others and it becomes a uniform verdict. There is no other category of citizens in India who are prosecuted at multiple places on one cause of action simultaneously. There is a law, there is many principles of law, double jeopardy, res judicata, issue estoppel. Basically what it means is, if one case between two parties has been decided by one court, you cannot go to another court on the same issue. Similarly, double jeopardy, one person cannot be punished for the same crime more than once. All these principles, however, are meant only for citizens of India. Doctors today are not considered fit to be citizens of India because they can be prosecuted in 5 or 6 fora or quasi-judicial bodies or courts simultaneously on the same issue between the same parties. This is something which is causing a lot of heartburn, a lot of frustration among doctors, and is going to create a problem for India in the years to come. It is changing the demographics of the medical community, with many bright and experienced doctors either migrating abroad or playing it safe by selecting their patients. Some are even refusing to provide emergency services, or some are retiring from active medical practice at a relatively young age. We have a lot of thick books on medical practice and on medicine, on surgery. But today, to practice medicine in India, you also need to be aware of what the courts want in a particular situation. So it is not only necessary that you read Harrison to practice medicine. You also need to be aware of what the court pronouncements are in different diseases and different judgments. Another major problem is there is no cap on compensation that can be awarded against a doctor. But a doctor, his fee is capped. Under Clinical Establishment Act, the government can decide how much you are going to charge. But if a patient is alleging negligence, he may claim any amount he wants. There is no cap on that. Whether it is 200 crore or 2000 crore, the patient is free, the consumer is free to ask for any amount, which is another major problem. So doctors today have to fight against disease, costs, ignorance, insurers, government, courts, patients, press, and the responsible media that we have gives fantastic headlines. We have innumerable cases, doctor death, ye, wo, and later everything has been proven against. But then the apology, not even the apology, the denial or the clarification will be pushed on within 2 lines on page 8. What these kind of things do, when you publicize kidney theft in a fashion as if it is a horror story or basically to increase your TRPs or to improve the sale of your newspapers. Now this gentleman in this cartoon is worried about kidney theft, and so he says, you operate on me, but you operate without anesthesia. The problem with healthcare is we are large, huge nation. Doctors are less in number in government services. Infrastructure is poor. There is a lot of waiting. That leads to a lot of frustration among patients, and that frustration comes out on the people who are in front of them, which is usually the doctors. Whereas the cause of that frustration is poor budgetary allocation to health. There is an increasing number of incidents of violence against doctors reported daily. I have data of at least 5 doctors who have lost their lives to violence. It is condoned, this violence is condoned by our society, judiciary and legislature. Whenever we go to make a complaint to the police regarding an incident of violence, every time we are told, Doctor Sahab, uska bhi to mareez mar gaya, usko gussa aa gaya. This is something which I have always failed to understand. If justifiable crime is non-punishable, you think that his patients, the patient expired, so the relatives were within their right to vandalize the hospital, to assault the staff. So you are saying that this is a justifiable crime, so there should be no FIR on this. Effectively, then all crime is justifiable. A person is very poor and he robs a rich man. What is the crime then? He is poor, it is justified. Why file a case against him? If a girl is rejecting the advances of some boy and he commits a crime, he has a justification in his mind. The people who killed Indira Gandhi, they had a justification in their mind. Should we not prosecute? This is something which has to somehow evoke a response within the conscience of society that violence against doctors is not acceptable. Fact remains, government does not invest in healthcare. Doctors bear the brunt of society's anger and frustration. And these are frequent happenings in all emergency where every one of us has been threatened by a patient's relative who knows so-and-so or so-and-so, or some phone call from some minister is coming. I have been frequently given this argument that despite all this, lakhs of students apply for NEET seeking to join medical profession. Some doctors who have their own medical establishments may be today also agreeing to pay huge amounts to get their children. But this proportion from the time when we joined medicine, when 80 to 90% of doctors would want their children to follow in their footsteps, today 75 to 80% of the doctors do not want their children to join medical profession. So this is something which is a cause of worry. And I say that despite my entire talk, we need doctors. So what we need to change is the way society is dealing with doctors today, because otherwise we are heading towards a crisis. And it has been to some extent exposed by this pandemic of corona, but fact still remains, it is not going to change the situation for doctors too much. Thank you. I hope this is helpful to youngsters.